Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We still have people joining, but that is okay. We're going to get rolling here. I see that we have some questions that have already been submitted for today's webinar. That's great. Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and we'll be collecting questions throughout this entire webinar. So as this webinar is being presented today, feel free to submit your questions. We're going to collect all the questions and go through all of them at the end. So I want to go ahead and get started here. Today's topic, this is a highly anticipated topic. Today's topic for our CMM webinar series part 3 is DIBs and CMMC requirements, simplifying the continuous audit process with MSSPs. So the topic is really going to be covering the concerns regarding the audit process for CMMC requirements. Our speaker today is Dasha Deckwerth, CISO and Global Cybersecurity Consultant, and she's going to speak for about 30 minutes. And then we are going to have a live, as this is live, we're going to have a complete Q&A session. Our goal is really to have all of the questions answered. Our goal is to make sure no questions are left behind. So please feel free to ask as many questions as you need to, and we will do our best to answer. I just want to give a nice little introduction here to Dasha. Dasha Deckwerth has been a technology professional for over 25 years, including 20 years of information security and assurance. She's led key cybersecurity initiatives within the government and civilian sectors, where she's provided IT security and cyber warfare services to NATO, various US, EU, and Asian government agencies, as well as multiple global commercial clients. She has designed and implemented security operations centers, incident response teams, delivered security consulting and regulatory compliance ISO audits in the Americas, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. So welcome, Dasha. Thank you so much. We are so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and thank you very much for putting this together. And hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining. I know CMMC is a big topic for everyone, and what we really want to do here is to give everybody the inside information on how to really deal with it. It's everybody is struggling, everybody has questions, so we really want to take this opportunity. I am a provisional assessor. So I went through the first class with the CMMC AB board to get trained on what and how CMMC will look like. And I'm also the co-founder and president of Stealth Group, which just recently has been named a C3PAO company. So we are going through the same process, just like you as participants here, asking questions and getting CMMC compliant. So what I want to do is really just go through this and answer the questions on how MSSP pretty much can help the DIB to achieve compliance, make it easier, make it more manageable, and in many cases also a lot cheaper, and have you as a small company be able to focus on what you can do best, which is run your business, and leave the CMMC part, or at least some of it, to the folks that can do that best. So as Jacqueline said, half an hour, I'm going to go through these slides. I'm not going to bore you. It's hopefully quite informative. I'm going to give a couple examples, but overall, please get your questions ready. That is always very useful to make sure that we get all the questions in. In case we do not get all questions in or answered, we will send out the responses later on via email to the participants. All right, so CMMC. If you're here, you probably already heard of it, and I'm not going to go too much into details of what it is. But basically what we're looking at here is CMMC level. There are 5. Level 1 through 2 deal with FCI, so contract federal contract information. CUI deals with unclassified confidential information and starts at CMMC level 3. And that's really the part that we're going to be looking at here and addressing. Right now, there's not much interest, or not many companies will be doing CMMC level 4 or 5. There's only a limited number that the DoD expects to be at that level, but the majority is expected to hit level 3. So that's what we want to focus on here. But feel free to ask any questions if you're looking at level 4 or 5 topics. So CMMC requirements, there's total of 17 domains, and overall 150, 170 some odd practices, actually 171 different practices that you need to meet. So for level 3, we're looking at 130 different practices in all these domains. And of course, as a small business, you're kind of looking, okay, where do I start? What do I do? And how can somebody like an MSP or MSSP help me to get through this? So I would like to get into this first on CMMC and how does it impact me. So if you are a small business and if you're looking at CMMC, you probably already know about the interim DFARS rule, which was rolled out as an interim rule back in December. You need to have a self-assessment, NIST self-assessment submitted to SPRS. That is on a point-based system. You're pretty much similar to before. Fill out, here are the NIST requirements, yet I'm meeting those, or no, I'm not meeting those. I have a poem, and you submit it via SPRS, and you're good. However, the DoD already started rolling out or publishing RFPs that have CMMC requirements in there. And so at this point, we all are trying to figure out, even though there's a 5-year rollout, we're looking at when is a contract going to come out that will have CMMC verbiage in there. And one thing we do not want to do is be in the boat where we as, or you as small businesses, we do not have the CMMC certification, because if you do not have it, you cannot get the contract. So that's why a lot of companies right now are asking themselves, okay, how can we get compliant? How can we get the certification? So right now is really the time to get started on this, because it is not such an easy process. So before we go into the details, a couple things I would like to share with you all on what I learned from the CMMC Provisional Assessor training. It's CMMC, it's a process and it's a maturity assessment. Yes, there are gaps and there's 20 new requirements between what you know from NIST and CMMC. And just like any maturity process, it's about evidence. You have to show that you are mature, that you have a mature cybersecurity program. And that is not something that you can show if, for example, you have an auditor coming tomorrow. Today, you write really quickly policies, procedures, you have everybody change your password, and you implement encryption. That does not show maturity. So keep in mind, as you go into this, you will have to make sure that you get ahead of this. You get your CMMC requirements, your policies, your procedures, your CMMC BAU in place as quickly as possible, because when you have the assessor come in, they will look for the evidence. They will want to see that you don't just change your password just yesterday, or didn't write your policies just 2 weeks ago. Okay, so please keep that in mind. The other thing is, as an assessor, we have to collect evidence. And there's 3 ways to do it. We can interview, we can observe, or we can test. Now, out of those 3, interview, observe, and test, we as the CMMC assessors will need to meet 2 of those. So in other words, for example, if we have an interview with you or your IT team, and you tell us, okay, we have backup and the backup is encrypted and we do this and this and this, and here's a policy and we read it, then the next step for us would be either to observe it so that you show us that, yes, you have encrypted backup, yes, that you, whatever it is, or we just simply test it. So keep in mind, 3 ways to collect evidence. We as an assessor need to meet 2. So one key thing to make it also easy and simple for you, doesn't matter if you do it in-house or if you work with an MSP or third party, is to make sure you prepare and collect the evidence as you go forward. So especially when it comes to MSPs, make sure they have the logs, make sure that they can give you the reports that you need, and make sure that they support you and help you prepare with all the evidence and everything that they will need to support and give to you so you can give it to the assessor. So there's different QAs, which is very different from what it used to be. So for a CMMC assessment, you cannot do it in-house. You have to go through an official C3PAO company and an official CMMC certified assessor. So the assessor cannot work by him or herself. They need to be attached to a C3PAO company, the official one that will take the information, the assessment documents from the assessor. They will do a QA, they will review to make sure there's no open questions, make sure that everything was collected according to the requirements, that the scoping was done properly, and basically validate, QA test. Now, once that is done, they will submit it to the CMMC accreditation board. They pretty much will do the same thing. They'll take a look at it. They will take the recommendation from the assessor. So for example, if I'm the assessor and say, okay, I've done this assessment, I recommend company A to be certified at CMMC level 3. I give that recommendation to the C3PAO. They pass it on to the CMMC AB board. The AB board or accreditation board will take a look at it. They will see the recommendation, they will see the evidence, the documents, everything that was done throughout the assessment, and they will issue the certificate. So keep that in mind. It's not the assessor, it's not the C3PAO that will issue the certificate. It's the CMMC AB that will do that. There's a conflict of interest. So if you have a C3PAO company or an official assessing company currently doing consulting work for you, you will not be able to hire the same company to do the official assessment. The same thing if you have a company helping you with remediation or providing managed security services for you, or as an MSP or MSSP to you, even though they may be a C3PAO company, you cannot hire the same company to pretty much audit their own homework. So those rules are fairly strict, and it's also clear that you as a company will not be able to do your own internal assessments. Even if you're a C3PAO company, even if you have your PA assessors, it is a conflict of interest, and the AB is not, and especially DoD as well, is putting a real tight controls around that. So a couple other things. There currently, or will be, I think by the end of this month, will be 140 provisional assessors, about 100 C3PAO companies, and we're looking at least for the next 5 years, about 300,000 companies that will be looking at getting certified. Yes, there will be more provisional assessors. Yes, there will be more C3PAO companies, but that is it for now. So yes, we all will need to collaborate between the 100 companies and 140 assessors, but as a recommendation from the AB as well is make sure you get ahead of it. Right now, if you are one of the companies that are about to bid or bidding on a contract that has CMMC verbiage, you will get priority over an assessment. So you will need to reach out directly to the CMMC AB, and they will prioritize based on which contract you're bidding and the verbiage there. All right, so most critical steps to take. So we've got 3 things, 3 levels. As I said at the beginning, we're going to take a look at CMMC level 3. So level 1 is protecting FCI's contract information. It's usually very simple. It's making sure you got the baseline in place, the security guidelines, the password changes, all of this. Nothing at that point needs to be documented. Level 2, you got 65 security requirements, a lot of it on NIST, 7 CMMC practices, and also 2 CMMC processes. Now here, you will need to have the policies and procedures in place. You will need to have technical solution in place, and it's basically a stepping stone between 1 and 2. Now level 3, and that's where majority of the companies will look for, is the 110 requirements, the 20 CMMC practices, and 3 CMMC processes that you will need to have in place. Now, let's keep in mind, this is CMMC, as the name states, it's about maturity. So I cannot emphasize this enough, is you have to have a baked-in cybersecurity in your DNA. So that means your people need to be security aware. You need to have the security training. You need to validate your people before they touch UI. You need to have that already established. Okay, so that alone will take some time. If you're ready to go, today and you've been doing that, you've been practicing it, you got the logs, you got the evidence, you're probably good. But I'm sure, and as we've seen in the past, there's always some areas that you may need to remediate or you may need to improve. Even if you met NIST requirements, there is things that will take some time and effort and evidence collection. So now let's get to the real question. How can an MSP or MSSP and their services help you with all this? So there's a couple things. Let's take a look at logging, monitoring, and incident response. It is one of the requirements in for CMMC starting at level 3. It is in audit and compliance, audit and accountability, incident response, risk management, situational. So basically, we're looking at 6 different domains here that all have something to do with logging, monitoring, and incident response that you as a small business need to meet. So, and I'm taking this in particular because it is dear to me. I have a lot of expertise here, but at the same time, it is also, I believe, one of the most complex one because it touches so many domains. It is very technical, but it also includes people and processes and know-how. So that's why I wanted to take this as an example. So logging. Across these 6 domains, you need to collect, review evidence, you need to correlate logs, you need to automate analysis, you need to control the code usage. You got a whole, I call it a laundry list of stuff that needs to be done. And then you got this risk and threat management that also falls in here. So you need to have updated threat profiles, you need to score for vulnerabilities, you need to have a threat intelligence. Now that is even a longer list. And now incident response on top of it. So being here as a small business, if I take a look at it, it's like, oh my God, where do I start? What do I do? It is a lot if you want to do it in-house. But the good thing is you got MSPs and MSSPs that have solution here that you can leverage. If it's the right partner, if it's the right MSP or MSSP that has that, they will be able to cover a lot of these things for you. So how are they efficient, or how can they deliver this, especially for small and medium-sized businesses? None of us, and even us as a small business, we're not a large enterprise. We cannot go out to IBM or Microsoft and push everything into GovCloud and buy the latest technology and the latest gadgets and hire 15 people to manage all of this and get a volume discount because we're so big. As a small business, you don't have any of these advantages. And this is where the MSPs can come to help. So they already have, if they're providing services, they have the existing technology, they've got the infrastructure, they've got the appropriate tools configured and ready to go. They've got the in-house skill set and the trained skill set, not just on what is needed to be done, but also the tool and probably CMMC as well. And then yes, if they're one of the larger ones, but even smaller MSPs, they get volume pricing, and they already have the established processes, service delivery standards, which can help any company out here to be able to leverage those and collect the evidence and get the help from the MSPs to pass their audit. Because all this is documented, or should be, in most cases it is, should be documented. The tools are there, the requirements are there, the logging, the documentation. So that alone is going to take a lot from you on what you need to do in-house. And we've done a quick assessment. So here's, for example, all the areas on the 6 domains that somehow tie in with CUI. So if you take only for the technical areas, MSPs and maybe 3 or 4 different solutions, couple MSPs, 3 or 4 different solutions, and we're looking at level 3, you can get, honestly, I didn't count this, but I think it's close to 80 some controls. You can cover with a good MSP, MSSPs, or maybe 2, and their tools, you can cover really good 80, 90% of what you need for level 3 or 4 or 5. So this is how the collaboration, and this is really the key, is trying not to reinvent the wheel, but really partnering and finding your MSPs, your partners to really get ahead of the game, get this, I call it outsourced, but outsourced and collaborate. We're all in the same boat. We all want to continue doing business with the DoD, but it does not have to be complicated. It does not have to be expensive, and it does not have to cost an arm and a leg. Now, there's one thing I would like to address here is also there are certain things that an MSP or MSSP cannot cover for you. Creating and establishing, maintaining resource plan. So for each one of the domains, you will need to have a resource plan. So which means you need to have committed staffing, you need to have committed budget, you need to have a committed plan around how you're going to address, let's say, incident response or account management or risk management. That all an MSP or a consulting company can provide you the templates, can work with you, but eventually the maintenance of it and setting the budget and the timelines and changing it, that's something you have to do in-house. Same thing, policies, procedure writing. You can get companies to help you with that, customize it, but then the policies, procedure adherence and making it your baked in CMMC best practice procedures, that is on you as a company, as your staff. Same thing, a background check, screening of your staff, training of CUI. Yes, you can outsource some of these, like the background check and screening. There's multiple companies out there that can do that for you. There is a whole bunch of security awareness company and training platforms out there that can do it for you. But at the same time, the process behind it on when and how to do it and maintaining the paperwork and making sure that it is obtained, maintained, that is something an MSP most likely will not be able to cover for you. Same thing on separation of duties. That is something we've seen a lot. You will, if you have a CTO that is at the same time a Chief Security Information Officer, it is a conflict of duties. Conflict of interest. You will need to make sure that whoever reviews something, there is a compliance team and you do not have the technical people or the administrators auditing or assessing their own internal work and how they do security. Same thing on limitation of access to data. Yes, you can restrict access to data via encryption, via permissions, but eventually the responsibility of protecting that data and assigning the people who really need to have access to it versus giving access to everyone, that is something that is the responsibility of you. And while an MSP can manage the technical access controls around it, it's still you that will have to make the decision who's going to get the access and who not. Same thing with escort visitors when they're on your premises, and also CUI data marking and classification. And I know that's been a big problem and still is. Not always do we get the data, especially from the government, that is marked appropriately. And also when we working on the client and we are creating CUI data, we may not be marking that properly. Yes, there are DLP solutions out there that can do the data classification for you, but eventually it is the responsibility for you as a business to have the responsibility and accountability to do that yourself. So a lot of different things to consider, but one last thing before we go into the Q&A, a couple things on urgency. So CMMC, how is it different? There are no gray shades in CMMC. It's either pass or fail, and POAMs are not accepted. When you get into an audit, please make sure you are ready. You have to meet every single one of the items. So even if you're going, let's say you're going for CMMC level 3, you have to make sure you got level 1, level 2, and level 3 all covered. If you miss one single item on level 1, your entire audit just goes out the window and you get nothing. So POAMs are not accepted at all. It's simple as that, pass or fail. So what's the timeline? So interim ruling was December 2020. The first RFPs with CMMC requirements are started coming out. The contract will not be awarded until company has a CMMC certifications, and there's an overall 5-year rollout plan. So that's a good thing, because there's no way any of us could really handle getting CMMC compliant and with the limited assessors, and still a lot up in the air with the DoD still trying to give some finer requirements and answering questions. So we've got time, but at the same time, you don't know as a small business or as a business in general when that contract gonna come out that's gonna be really good for you, that is pretty much customized for you and your delivery and what you do, but you can't get the CMMC contract or CMMC requirements and certification because you haven't started thinking about CMMC. So what makes it so urgent? Because you need to show the maturity, the baked-in processes. Creating a document one day before the assessment is not going to work. All right, so where do I start? Very simple. Start internally. You've got to change your approach in your company. Security is supposed to be a culture. Best process to achieve CMMC certification: do a gap analysis, internal or external, get a consulting company, an RP, a PA, doesn't matter. Do the remediation, get an official assessment readiness review from a PA, or when we get to that, from a CA, to see if you are ready, and then go for your certification. So when do I need to start? Preferably now. As I said, it's a maturity model. You need to collect evidence, especially if you have not done it in place, especially if you know you have a lot of remediation ahead of you. So what will you need? People and know-how. You can have your internal IT, compliance staff, external assessors like provisional assessors or registered practitioners. Policies, procedures, very key. You can write those in-house or get help. And then tools and services. Yes, you will need tools, and yes, managed security or IT services provider that can cover some of the bigger areas that you do not have in-house, that, for example, need 24/7, or where you identify here is where you as a company need to focus on this, but you don't have the expertise, so outsource it or get a managed security or managed provider to help you with some of these areas. And then last but not least, CMMC Accreditation Board. They have a website. They are open out there. They answer questions. You can see them also on the webinar. They have town halls. They have all sorts of advertising out there to really, just like we are doing, educating to get businesses up there and be able to meet the requirements. So any of that, and of course, especially if you're here, reach out to any of us on the panel here. I'm sure we will have a slide at the very end with contact information for all of us, so you can really get started if you have any questions. And now that pretty much gets us to the questions. So over to you, Jacqueline.
Excellent. That was a lot of really good, good information. We do have a lot of questions. We're going to go ahead and get started, and keep the questions coming in as we get going here, because time is what we have right now. So first question. I work with one company that is an enterprise with branches around the entire U.S. that they all bid individually on DoD contracts. Will they be audited as an enterprise or as branches? And it says each branch has its own cage code, as does the enterprise.
Very good question. So yes, as part of the assessment that we do, it's about cage code. So when we do the scoping with you as a client, we have the form that asks for the different cage codes. So yes, different entities, different cage codes will be assessed. But also the question is about the scope. Do you have in each one of the entities CUI? And if not, they may be out of scope depending on how you have it segmented. But if you have a CUI across the board, yes.
Okay. Another question, let's see. If an information system is CMMC certified, is separate certification required for each lab and workspace, physical security, access control, et cetera, that access that information system remotely?
So an information system per se cannot be CMMC certified because you got policies, procedures around it, including physical control. So it's not just about the IT environment. So in other words, if we go and assess or identify the scope for you, we're going to take a look at it. Okay, here's the main lab. Here's where the technology is. You have people coming in, you have people accessing it from remote. So in that case, the scope gets extended to those locations where you can access it from. So yes, it is there. And by the way, that's kind of the same thing that a lot of questions ask, especially now with COVID. A lot of people have been working remotely. So we've seen those questions a lot of times is, how do you address remote workers? Well, the DoD and the CMMC board are clear. Guess what? We will have to audit your remote workers at home. And the same requirements, physical access to those systems, locked, locked away from your kids, not using your school, your kid's school laptop to access CUI and all that, that's in scope. So yes, your lab will be in scope as well.
We have another question here in regards to, you were talking about maturity. Idea of maturity, length of time. How long should a company be using their policies, procedures, new security, the overall new security culture? 6 months, a year? Really the question is the length of time.
Very, very good question. And I wish we would have 100% guidance on this. Now at this point, unfortunately, there's no time limit. Based on the CMMC board, it is up to the assessor to use his discretion and his expertise in the field to see, is it mature enough? So, and I think this is kind of the, yeah, good and bad, because I can say, I mean, let's take a look at it. Backup or disaster recovery. Disaster recovery, you practice once a year. You may have some tabletop exercises. If I come in and I'm gonna take that 1 year and you've only been, let's say, in business for 6 months, I'm not gonna fail you because you didn't have a disaster recovery plan and a test a year ago if you've only been in business for 6 months. However, if you can show that you had some tabletop exercises for specific areas, and I see, okay, they're good enough, you've proven that yes, your disaster recovery will work, and you have a plan that you still, for example, adding additional infrastructure to it because you are a startup, and you have a plan and vision, how this is going to work, you talk to vendors and all that, I probably will mark you as, yep, you're good to go, because even though it's not that 1 year, but you got your ducks in a row and I can see that you are mature. So it's one of those answers that, have a plan. That's really, I can say, have a plan, show that you're doing the right things. And if you convince the assessor, yeah.
Okay, the next question is in regards to, how long does an assessment typically take?
Very good question. Yeah, how long is a string? So it's one of those things. If you're a small business, you have one location, one office, one cage code, you have, let's say, everything in-house, it can go very quickly. Now, if you are a big company and you have multiple locations, and on top of that, multiple people working remotely, and we have to visit them as well, and data centers and everything else, it's going to become lengthy. But whatever, it doesn't matter if you're small or big, the key thing here is be prepared for the assessment. Be ready, have your evidence ready. And the evidence, I mean, the form itself is, or the requirements are out there. The DoD has the spreadsheet. You can take a look at it. Also, if you work with anyone, they will be able to provide you that list of what they usually look at. So configuration files, policies, procedures, all that. Make sure you have those ready. Make sure you have those either electronically in a folder, or your people on standby that they can just log in and show the assessor, hey, here's what our Active Directory looks like, here's how we manage our encryption keys, and then be ready, because the readier you are, the easier and quicker it will be on the assessor, and we will not have to wait around, and that also will keep your costs down.
We also have, kind of to piggyback off of what you just said in regards to keys, we had a question come in. Can you provide additional thoughts on assessments? For example, if as an assessor I review a policy document and talk to someone to see if they follow the policy, is that a pass, or do you need to collect physical or virtual examples, specifically with respect to terminated employees and access removed and keys collected?
Yes, you need to collect evidence. So yes, if the policy states for people with CUI access, you need to remove immediate any access, confiscate the laptop, remove anything that you have. If that's what the policy says, then yes, the next step would be go to HR, take a look at who has been terminated and I'm sure other assessors do it as well. They pick a random months, usually within 6 or 12 months, say, okay, let's say we're in April. Okay, let's take November, let's take October, and let's take February. Show me the list of who has been terminated. And then we have a list, and then we go to the IT admins and take a look at it. Okay, was that account really terminated at that point? Or do you have a ticketing system where somebody says, okay, this person is being terminated, please terminate, and then the acknowledgement from the IT team within a few minutes, yeah, has been terminated. Now, if that shows that the termination was done today or day one, but then the actual account termination and the removal of access was done a week later, that's a red flag. So yeah, evidence must be collected, correct.
Here's another question. Are you advising clients to move their commercial Office 365 hosting to Microsoft's FedRAMP GCC and or GCC high equivalents?
So personally, I'm kind of trying to keep security and business operations and finances kind of aligned with each other. I know moving the entire enterprise into GovCloud or GCC High is probably going to be expensive. Now, if you're a big enterprise and you need to do it, fine, I'm not going to argue with you. But if you're a small business and you're trying to, especially now with COVID, trying to somehow manage and survive, I think there's different answers. And the answer that I would recommend, take a look at your process and your company. Where do you really have CUI data? For example, I'll give you an example. Us as a company, we have a commercial arm and we have a federal arm. We have commercial environment. We have, and we're as a C3PAO company, we're going through these whole changes. But we are actually, and there are different tools out there, not to make this a sales pitch, but Prevail, for example, it's they have great tools where you can get encrypted, DoD strength encrypted email, including hard drives, including storage that is encrypted. So if you can separate these processes out from a logical, technical, and a business process perspective and people perspective, why not? De-scope it. Just like if you only have, out of a 200 people company, you only have 2 people accessing or creating CUI data. Would you really want to have hard disk encryption, DoD strength level across the entire enterprise? It's going to be expensive. So scoping is my recommendation. And it's also the one from the CMMC AB is scope it right, scope it, define. And if you need to define and clearly change your processes that you currently have to really scope it small so it's affordable and manageable, then right now is the time.
Well, and that kind of goes right into, you talked about it being affordable, goes right into, we have a couple questions about costs and budget. One of the questions is, how much should small companies budget for level 1 and even level 3?
So level 1, you don't need any tools per se. You don't need to document anything. It's I mean, I don't have the exact list in front of me, but it's more about, do you have password management? Do you have lockout? It's like basic hygiene. Do you have the proper configuration? Do you have antivirus running? Is it being updated constantly? So those things, honestly, especially if you're in the DoD space, I kind of expect that you have them already, because it is today's best practice, best security practice. Now, level 3 is going to become a little bit more complicated because yes, you will need encryption. You will need the threat feed. You need to log logs. You need to monitor them, and this is where it can become really expensive if you try not to, or if you try to do it in-house. So, do you have the requirement to monitor 24/7? No, not at level 3, but you should be able to respond to it when it happens. So, for example, if I'm a one-man security person in a 15 people company, and we set up a log collection and a SIM around it, could be simple, could be open source, as long as it does what is needed. Does not have to be IBM or one of those big vendors. Could even be a simple open source solution. But as long as it's correlated, as long as it gets the threat feeds, as long as it alerts, that's fine. But I'm the recipient of the alert, so I better go take a look at it. So it's a technology and a process. Does a level 3 require investment, budget, and cost? Yes, but you can be smart about it. And that's also where the MSPs come in. And it is really, why trying to invent the wheel in-house or trying to create it on your own if you can really work with people and companies that have done it, that are doing it, that have the people trained and staff. It's easier and a lot cheaper to use a solution that can do that for you and use resources that are shared resources that are already sitting behind 24/7 behind the monitor and addressing these issues. So it's every company is different. I can't say the budget is going to be X amount or 30% of your IT budget is going to be on top of what you already have for CMMC. But it's level 3, it's going to cost. Yeah.
We have another question here in regards to implementing frameworks. Is implementing the CIS controls framework appropriate for preparing for a CMMC audit?
Well, CIS is a lot on the configuration side. So yeah, it's a good framework. I would use it. It is very technical. Now, in some cases, it may not meet. I mean, it really depends what you're looking at. Is when it comes to encryption, does the CIS Windows image address FIPS encryption? Probably not, because that is very CMMC specific. So yes, as long feel free to use it where you're using it as well, but make sure that those nuances that CMMC has, like FIPS encryption, for example, you have those enabled and are part of your build.
We have another question that has come in. The requirements for multi-factor authentication, how are those assessed? And do all logons to, oh, I lost the question here, I apologize. Do all logons to computers connected to the internet via network, but not connected to the privileged network require multi-factor authentication for logon? So the question is really, the guidance on the control is not specific on this.
Yeah. So let's keep in mind, and a lot of these questions come around, do I need to have that or not? So the first question is that everyone needs to ask is, what is your scope? Because CMMC guidelines only apply to that particular scope. So if you descoped, let's say you've got 15 offices and only one office manages CUI, and you've got the logical and physical disconnect from all the other 14 offices, then that one office is your CMMC scope. So for that CMMC scope, yes, multi-factor and everything else that CMMC level 3, 4, or 5 have applies. Now, if you have the other 14 offices suddenly connect to your CMMC enclave, then yeah, everything will be in scope. And that's why descoping and really identifying what are your processes, what are the tools that I really need for this particular area. The smaller you keep it, the easier it is to manage, the easier it is to maintain, the less it's going to cost. And it's also going to protect you and the CUI data, which is the whole goal of this. You don't have it spread all over. You really have it centralized or centralized in one place, and you know exactly where it is. And this is where the scoping comes in.
Here's a question in regards to CMMC level accreditation for MSPs or MSSPs. Do they have to meet a specific amount of requirements or accreditation to provide CMMC services to clients?
So there will be if it's in the scope of CUI, yes, there will need the requirement. So for example, if you're putting your CUI information out into the cloud, then yes, you will need to go to GovCloud. So I'm not sure if, for example, Microsoft or any of those are already being audited or not, but pretty much if they are selling you something for your CUI environment, then yes, they will have to meet the encryption level that DoD expects. Yes, they will need to have the US only people managing the SOC and not being outsourced somewhere else. So yes, but then also you need to keep a difference here between, are you outsourcing or giving to the MSP your CUI data? Are they handling it? Do they have access to it? If yes, then yeah, that extends the scope, and that's where the processes come in. But if you're, for example, you've got you're only sending metadata to a SOC that is really just looking at metadata, they have no access to your systems. It's a one-way communication, an alert pops up, and then they send a ticket over to you. Whole different story, because they don't have access to CUI.
Okay, and we have a couple questions here in regards to SOC. The first one is, can you discuss what is required to meet the practice or process for a SOC 24/7 for level 3 specifically? Is there any specific that you can discuss on that?
Oh, honestly, the specifics, I would actually have to pull up the detailed requirements, but at the high level, I mean, the details really, it's in the spreadsheet, but I think there's like 16 or 17 different requirements that kind of fall into it. So logging for one is for sure. Analyzing the log data, and it does not require 24/7, but somebody needs to take a look at it. You should have automated correlation. And to be honest, I think some of this was actually in the presentation that I had open. So
yeah, I think it was actually. And you know what, we'll go ahead and we can do a follow-up. I've got a list of who's submitting all these questions, so we can directly follow up with you if we can provide more information to you.
Yeah, but cyber threat hunting's capabilities, for example, is one thing. Employing a mechanism to analyze executable code and scripts, monitor system security alerts and inbound, outbound traffic, analyze system behavior to detect malicious actions. So those are kind of the things that fall under the SOC. And then be able to also have an incident response. So analyze, triage events, be able to respond to those. But you have to respond. You have to have established and maintain 24/7 response capabilities. So it does not mean you have to have 24/7 somebody sitting there, but at least somebody gets notified when an alert, even if it's at 2 o'clock in the morning, gets up, gets the alert, and is able to respond. That will work.
And here's a question in regards to SOC audit. During a SOC audit, if a small percentage of a sample, say 2 out of 10 samples fail, they would pass the audit, but have to respond to an exception. In CMMC, would the 10 or 20% fail be an immediate fail?
Yeah, I mean, CMMC is either you have it or you don't. There's no gray zone, pass or fail. Now, if for example, you have a defined process and there's exceptions and it's defined why there's an exception and the risk was accepted, there may be some mitigating control around it or something, that's a whole separate discussion. So the assessor will take a look at it, will evaluate it, what they're looking at to see, is it good or is it just negligence or lack of processes, or is it a consistent problem that is just not being addressed or about to be addressed. However, if as I said, in the beginning. If you can show the processes, if you can show you have a plan, you have any kind of remediation action or compensating control, usually the assessor will pass that if it's acceptable, of course. But also there is the CMMC AB has a 90-day grace period. So for example, if you have a really good mature process, but you failed on a couple of things that, I don't know, may not have been documented properly, or you're missing a couple of tickets, or I don't know, something that is not really a major faux pas, you have those 90 days after it gets submitted that the auditor will give you those days to remediate. Now, it cannot be something brand new you create, like implementing a SOC that you didn't have before. That's not going to work. But if it's some smaller things that are easily fixable that you didn't have during the audit, you got that 90 days. But that will be based on the discretion of the CMMC AB to give you that and to evaluate it.
Okay. There's another question in regards to tips. If you have any specific tips to limiting the scope or size of the CUI.
Tips, well, knowing where your data is, knowing how it comes in, how it leaves the premises, and the whole process around it, who touches it, where does it get created, where does it get deleted. So my recommendation is really map it out from incoming, might it be from the government or from, I don't know, how is it coming in, all the way, create the process, define it, do a Visio diagram, whatever works to really see where it is. And then once you have it visualized, I think then you can see, okay, well, why is it in this department? Why are they even have access to this, let's say, file share? Or why does it get emailed to this address? Maybe instead of emailing it to 15 people, let's create a separate inbox for incoming and communication with the government or with our vendors that meets the CMMC requirements. And let's give all our employees a signature down below their the signature saying, do not send any CUI files. If you need to send CUI files, please use this email address to send them. So, you know, it does not always have to be expensive, but it needs to be tweaked.
Okay, we have another question here. What are some important security tools that really need to be put into place before doing the assessment?
Everything you need to have to meet that desired CMMC level 3. So if you're going for level 3, you will need your encryption, you will need your log analysis, you will need your policies in place, you will need to have your access control, you will need, I mean, honestly, everything. Some things can be done with tools. Some things, depending on your budget and depending on the people and the know-how you have in-house, you may have to do it manually. I know there's a lot of companies out there that have the latest and the greatest risk tool that cost them $500,000. It took them 2 years to implement it and takes them 5 FTEs to maintain it, but it works for them. They're a large enterprise. But I've also seen medium and small companies that have the same thing on a spreadsheet, but they maintain it, they review it periodically, they keep track of it, but it's a spreadsheet. So it depends on the maturity of your company, the budget, and the skill set you have.
Okay. And another question in regards to how long does the review at the CMMC AB take? It's kind of from the beginning of the presentation.
I know that they're trying to do it as quickly as possible. Now we're still in the pilot phases, so there is no official, hey, anyone can go out and get certified at this point. They are only provisional assessors. The C3PAO companies, we also are waiting for our own DIBCAG assessment. So we're waiting on DoD to make it official as well. There is going to be, for the provisional assessors, another certification and training later, I believe, end of this summer, to make us official certifiers. In the interim solution, it all gets routed throughout the AB, and it's in the pilot stage. But I know that they have been working as quickly as possible. I know that they're also growing, they're all getting people, they're all getting trained. So it's what they call it, the crawl, walk, run approach. We're in the crawl phase. We're all learning, we're all improving processes. We're also giving a lot of feedback back to the AB, and AB is communicating with DoD to kind of funnel back what we know, what the industry is saying, their concerns, and they're trying to make some changes as well. So we're in a moving phase.
Okay. I have two follow-up questions here. One is from what you were just discussing with SOC. We were talking about the 24/7 alerting. The question is, the 24/7 alerting from a SOC is required. That's the question. As long as his organization is alerted and takes action, within a reasonable time period. But if 24/7 alerting is required, where is that documented as a requirement?
Okay, so I do not have the spreadsheet in front of me. My memory is pretty good, but I'm not going to say anything verbatim here. I know at some point the 24/7 is required, but I'm not going to say it is at level 3. But let's put it this way: as an assessor, in the response time, how quickly you need to respond, it is not defined in any on the CMMC side. However, I know that as an assessor, if I go in and I see an alert that is, okay, well, somebody changed a file on a test environment or something. Yeah, okay, I'll take a look at it 2 o'clock in the morning and say, okay, that can wait till tomorrow. Now, if I see multiple alerts coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning where somebody is literally doing denial of service, trying to do sniffing, trying to gain brute force attack, or doing a brute force attack against access to one of my servers, I'm not going to wait 8 hours. So as an assessor, I will take a look at it. What kind of alert was that? And if it was critical, did you really wait 8 hours? Did you really wait until Monday to address that? Or did you have a team to go and take a look at it?
Here's another follow-up. This is when we were talking about 365. So this is the follow-up. How can I help my customers justify when Microsoft publicly deems Office 365 commercial to be out of scope for CMMC?
Sorry, it's I justify when publicly deems commercial to be out of scope. Well, yeah. Let's put it this way: official. So the commercial version does not meet CMMC requirements. It does not. It does not have, from my understanding, the encryption. It also, I don't think, has all the support, everything in the US. So that's why it's not part of it. That's why a lot of companies are looking into moving this into GovCloud.
Okay. And then here's another question. Should we pull IT policy 17, in parenthesis, 17, one for each family, out of the SSP just so it's more manageable?
I'm not sure. Well, let's put it this way: the goal of the SSP is really to understand, or to show the assessor as well what your system looks like. Personally, I would not necessarily put a policy procedure in an SSP. I may reference it, but it would be not, at least for me, it would not necessarily be in there. Now, as I said, the SSP is really just making sure you understand, you show what you have in place, how it's tied together, what your infrastructure looks like, the security controls that you have in place. But from a simplicity, and this is just my personal opinion, from a simplicity, I would just, instead of integrating it, if you want to do it, just point to it, but be flexible enough to change it as stuff changes, to, to quickly change, accommodate, especially in a moving environment like this, where where stuff is not 100% written in stone just yet. DoD is going to make some changes. There will be also changes in the CMMC. So as long as you stay flexible and keep to what needs to be in the document first and foremost, everything else is an additional feature that yeah, can be helpful.
Okay, there's a comment we were just talking about Office 365. Someone commented that commercial meets DFARS, not CUI, and CUI support starts at GCC. So that was just a comment that was put in here.
Okay.
And what else do we have here? I think we have a couple more. Someone had asked earlier about a reference to the list of evidence. This was from the very beginning. Can we get a reference to the list of evidence?
Yes, so my suggestion is, and we can put that in the chat here, the DoD website that has all the documentation, it's out public, and the link is, I don't know if I can post it or not. Should be.
If not, we can definitely include it. So, of course, after the webinar is over, everyone's going to receive a link to the recording, and we can provide that information as well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, but the website itself has all materials. It has the worksheet with every single requirements, has the supporting documentation, has literally everything explained for everyone to understand what is expected, what the evidence is, what they're looking at. And they give even the examples, for example, access control. So they're probably looking at policy, procedures, they'll be looking at log files, they'll be looking at group policy, looking at individual, anything out there. So yeah, it's in there. And my recommendation is, especially as updates are being done, that website, especially if you're in the CUI space, bookmark it, continue looking at it. They also have a good FAQ section in there as well that they're updating. So please have a look at that as well, because that's where we get also a lot of our information from and insights, especially when they make a new announcement.
Okay. We have another question or another comment. We expect to see increasing use of 7019 and 7020 clauses before use of 7021 increases. Do you have thoughts on that?
I don't know what the DoD is planning. I try not to. I hear some insight, I hear some rumor, but honestly, I don't know what is expected at this point, so I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay. And then I have a couple other questions. These were asked right before the webinar started. In regards to some of the controls, do certain controls fail more than others?
So the assessments or pre-assessments or pre-gap analysis that we've done and working with different companies is usually on the process side. So if we take a look at everything on the different 17 controls on the 997, 998, and 999, and especially on the 997 is have a plan. And a lot of people are struggling with that. Is what do you mean by have a plan? Well, for example, have a plan on knowing that you will need to have a budget for a security person, or you will need to have a budget for an MSP to manage this part of it. Let's take a look at incident response. You need a plan for incident response. So, yep, your plan is, I'm going to have it done in-house. I'm going to need 2 people. I'm going to provide training to keep them updated and trained in their daily work. So I'm going to have tool training. I'm going to work with vendors. So basically have a plan to show you know what you're doing. And it's not just oh yeah, today I have a security person, tomorrow I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So it needs to be documented, and the assessor is going to take a look at it. And if you have, sometimes it's even easy if you have a plan and saying, I'm going to be this whole part, I'm going to put the budget aside, I'm going to sign a contract with company A, company B, and they're going to manage it. And we have that, and we have a defined plan with these are the deliverables that they have to give us, here's the SLAs, and here's how they're going to support us for CMMC assessment. Sometimes that's good enough as well, as long as you know what you're doing and how you're doing.
Okay, and these questions, the next two questions here, are really more for stealth. Does stealth focus on any one particular CMMC level, 1, 3, or 5? Is there any specific focus that stealth is more?
Yeah, so nobody at this point does level 4 or 5. The DoD is not there yet. So level 1 is, so to answer your question short, level 3 is our sweet spot because it comes across everything. Level 1 is, as I said, it's kind of best practice. Yes, we can assess, but it's honestly, it's a quick 15 different points. It's a quick thing. But at the same time, our clients are the ones that are looking at CUI, and that starts at level 3. So that's where we get most of the requests. I think level 1, and also having talked to other PAs, they kind of see the same tendencies where companies that require level 3 is the majority of the requests we get. Level 1, it's really just contract information. A lot of companies have that knowledge and the insight to take a look at the list and like, okay, passwords, yeah, okay, I can do that. We're doing that. Antivirus, yes, we have it. Nothing else needs to be documented. So it's not like they actually need a lot of help or assistance or third party to get them to that level.
Okay. And is there a specific percentage of total CMMC requirements or controls that fail in an audit? If there, do you happen to know, is there, are there any specific percentages or?
Well, there's no official audits yet. As I said, we're still in the in the pilot program. So I can only talk to what we've seen, and I can only talk to what I've discussed with other PAs. But the biggest controls that we see that fail is really on the documentation and being able to show the evidence. I think the biggest pain point is trying to come in and as an assessor and giving a long laundry list from CMMC, here's what we're going to look at, and then having the engineers translate that and getting the time to actually collect the evidence. I think that's the biggest pain point. Sometimes a simple, okay, firewall rule, let's review that. Oh, updated network diagram. Okay, that could take some time. Vulnerability scanning, yeah, we do it, but we haven't really done it recently, or yeah, I don't know where the reports are. It's not so much on the technical side, it's more of the operational and the evidence collection. I think if as a company you establish that process that, hey, we're doing monthly scans, then embed it into your process when the monthly scan is done, create the report, put it somewhere, and just start building this repository where if you have an assessor come in, it doesn't matter if it's the first time or after 3 years you get your new CMMC renewal, you will have the ducks in a row and your people will know what to do. And the cost overall to take your people and get ready for an assessment is going to be a lot less. And they will, because it's going to be part of the BAU, and they will not be dragged away from their day job to support an assessment like they would if you have nothing in place.
Excellent. If you're serving in the role of an MSSP, do you have a partner organization that you use as the assessor?
Yes. So we have partnerships, and that was one of the things that the CMMC AP told us as well. So you guys need to partner. And they told us that as PAs and also as these C3PAOs. And as I said, or as I showed earlier, there's going to be or are 140 PAs now and about 100 C3PAOs. The DoD is really clear on conflict of interest. So yes, we kind of, most of us know each other from a PA level. As C3PAOs, we also have great collaborations, and others are having different collaborations as well. So yes, we have partners. We cannot do any official referrals, we cannot get any kickbacks, but yes, we can say, okay, here are the companies that we work with, but eventually you as a company, you still need to go out, get those quotes from any of the C3PAOs and see what is the best fit for you. Can they put you in the schedule? Is it across your budget, or does it meet your budget requirements? All of those. So the decision eventually is on the company that will get certified to pick and choose. And the C3PAOs, by the way, there's a marketplace on the CMMC website where you can see all C3PAOs, all provisional assessors. So their contact info, websites, phone numbers, everything is out there. Very transparent.
That answers another question. We had somebody ask a question about, hey, we're just getting started. That information, what we can do is we can provide the website information along with all of the contact information at the end of this webinar, because to kind of get started and say, where do I begin? Where do I start? We can provide those resources. And then, of course, if there are any follow-up questions, we're happy to deal with you one-on-one on that.
Yeah. And also one thing is, I just would like to throw another link that we can probably throw out here is the definition of CUI. Because also one thing I've noticed is, what really is CUI? Do we have CUI? Do we not? It's not clear. There is a website that we will share here where you can go in there, take a look at specifically for your industry, for your area, and really take a look at it. But my recommendation is, please stay on top of it, take a look, validate, because as a company, you are responsible for for the CUI that are in-house. So even if you sometimes may not be sure, hey, is it CUI or not, ask the contracting officer, or if you're a subco, ask your prime company to give you a guidance, or look at the website and see, is this CUI or not. But better to classify it as CUI if it's somewhere in the gray zone than say it's not, and you may have a problem. So
okay, we do have a kind of a specific question here for CUI. If DoD wants to review an SSP under DFARS 7012, is that assessment based on the contract and the CUI for that contract only, or will other contracts with CUI scope be assessed?
From my understanding, I think that's only going to be as part of the contract. Yes, the DoD has the right to review, assess. Now, I know that the CMMC, AB, and the DoD are working together, but from my understanding, at least the latest info, DoD will be able to come back and do the assessment themselves, review, but in that, as part of that contract.
And here's another question that just came in. What's the relationship between primes and subs when it comes to CMMC? Do primes directly hold subs accountable?
Pretty much, yes. So it is about the supply chain, and supply chain is not just a prime, it triggers all the way down. Now, where and how this will, from a technology perspective, how this will play out, we've hearing different scenarios where, for example, in some cases, the prime will keep and manage all the CUI. Sometimes it's going to be the sub and the prime. Sometimes, of course, you as the prime or sub may be working directly on the client side, where the clients will provide the CUI enclave and the data and the laptops and everything else. So we got different scenarios, but overall, you as a sub, if you will be touching CUI data or producing CUI data or the recipient of CUI data, you are in scope and you need to meet those requirements. So yes. And I believe the verbiage, even though there are only a couple RFPs out in the pilot, I strongly believe that is also captured in the RFP, that the subcos and everyone working on it will need to be CMMC clear. Now, again, from a technology perspective, the question is really, where is it housed? Where exactly is the enclave? But nobody will get a contract if they do not have the CMMC certification.
Okay. I don't see any new questions coming in. And I know we're getting close to the end here. Oh, I got another one. One more. Is there a way the subs can just view the data and not actually have to receive it or protect it?
Yes, there are ways. I know some government agencies already work with that or started working with that, especially when it comes to remote work, where they have thin clients in their environment where you manipulate or view the data there. You cannot take it anywhere else. You can't access it really. So yes, I mean, there's different technology solutions. Each prime, each contractor, or yeah, each prime, each contractor, but also each agency will probably have some requirements or restrictions, but also the industry is, I mean, we're all kind of thrown into this and everybody is jumping on this. So I know there's a lot of companies out there that are helping to bridge this gap of, well, how are we going to handle, how are we going to help small businesses, which makes up the biggest, the biggest chunk of the DIB, to stay in the business, because we cannot afford to lose 80% of the DIB small businesses just because CMMC requirements are too expensive to maintain and comply with. So yeah, I'm sure there will be different ways and different technologies out there to address that, where you do not have to meet your entire operations, your entire company straight into GovCloud and go bankrupt. So.
Okay. Have you heard of any funding that might be available for small businesses who would require level 3?
No, I recall something was being said that it may, honestly, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't want to say anything that I'm not sure about.
Sure.
Yeah, but
sure.
no, I don't know.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. This was wonderful. This was so many good questions. I thank you
Yes.
all for hanging in there. I know it's been a while since we started this webinar. What we will be doing is sending you a recording of the webinar, and we'll do our best to recap the information. And you know, with that being said, we're going to also share contact information. If you have any follow-up questions, of course, you can reach out to Dasha or, you know, Misty at Stealth ISS. And I'm going to go ahead and, you know, let you guys know we do have, you know, this was part 3 of our series. We were really excited to present this information. Part 4 is going to be coming up next month. So when we email you the information and the link to this recording, we'll send you the link to part 4. Part 4 is in May, on May 19th, where we're going to talk about the technical controls and requirements for CMMC coverage. So, you know, we kind of have come full circle, right? We started with what is CMMC, and, you know, we started with the CMMC AB. And, you know, so in this last webinar that we'll be doing in May, we're really going to be talking about the technical controls and requirements. And, you know, not only will SimCore, someone from SimCore will be presenting, but also Logarithm. So we're really looking forward to the technical aspect that we're going to really dive into for that. I want to thank you, Dasha. This was fantastic. And with the number of questions that we had, you know, I think we're seeing a lot of thanks on here. Yes, Mark, Mark made a comment. Yes, you hope to see the references. If there's anything that wasn't answered, we're going to be going over all of these questions to ensure that we contact you directly. We'll shoot you an email with any questions that we didn't, you know, maybe we didn't cover all the way, or if we needed clarification on any of them. And Dasha, fantastic job. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with all of us today.
Hey, thank you very much for organizing this, and we're really looking forward to continue a partnership with you. And thanks everyone for all the attendees that were here. The questions were great, and yeah, please reach out. As I said, we're all in the same boat. We need to tackle this in some way, shape, or form, and it does not have to be impossible. It does not have to be complicated or expensive. So yeah, any questions, do reach out to us.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dasha.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.